This is the Authority Company Podcast, conversations with leaders designing our future. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and we're doing a two-part deep dive into why your workplace feels the way it does. Michelle Herline, the author of Cultural Excellence, has spent decades reshaping cultures at companies like Bandag and Bridgestone, multiplying performance by focusing on people. In part one, we're breaking down the problems and patterns she sees everywhere and why most organizations miss the mark on culture. This is your jumpstart to understanding what makes a workplace feel energizing instead of draining. Michelle Herline, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Good. Hi, Joe. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. And we have so much to get to. We're going to break this down over 2 episodes. But first, I want to start by your origins as a culture expert. And I know for many of us who get into odd lines of work, for lack of a better word, we don't set out to do this. Like, we weren't born and then, like, in kindergarten say, I'm going to be a culture expert one day. When I was a little kid, I'm going to do podcasts when I grow up. It's not a thing. So when did you realize, was there a moment, like one of those life-changing moments where you said, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life?
Yes, and it was when Bridgestone purchased Bandag. So in 2007, I was working for Bandag Incorporated, and I was in charge of leadership development, organizational development, and culture. And Bridgestone purchased Bandag for their retreading technology. Bridgestone is a new tire company. Bandag was a retread company, and they needed that retreading technology. So they purchased us for $1 billion and soon learned that there was something very different about the environment, even in the manufacturing plants and the leaders that they met with. They really saw a different level of leadership, a different level of collaboration. And it was the culture that really attracted them. And since I was responsible for the leadership development and culture of the company, they were really interested in what we were doing. So I collaborated and brainstormed and shared with them. And in 2009, they moved me to Nashville because the CEO of Bridgestone at that time really wanted to do a culture transformation of that iconic company. So that's where I realized, wow, okay, I do have a little niche, and there is something magic that we have done here at Bandag that other organizations are interested in.
And it's so funny. I'm not sure. Did you have the self-awareness at the time that you were doing something different than other people? Because I know people in the culture world that I'm sure you've probably used this or heard it, but like culture happens when you're not looking. Like culture is happening when the boss is not
Yeah.
around. So were you aware that you had made a transformation during that merger that was like, oh, or was it one of those things where someone said to you, hey, Michelle, culture good here? Was it something like that?
Well, at Bandag, the CEO was very intentional. He actually called it his great social experiment. So I got to witness it. I had, in my studies, my formal studies, I had started learning about leadership and organizational culture. And at Bandag, I really got to see it in action. So he was the founder's son. The company was a publicly traded company, but the family owned 51% of the company. And so he really got to make a lot of the decisions in the organization, and he wanted to make it a place where all of the people flourished, and really believed if you focused on the people, they would help you perform and get great organizational results, which did happen.
That's awesome. And you talk in the book about defining your purpose early in your life. Is that purpose develop, change, modify as life goes on? How does it guide you now going forward?
Yeah, it is. It has evolved. So even before working for Bandag, I was working for Drake Bean Morin, and I was I was running a consulting office for people who were downsized from a merger between two utility companies, one on the east side of Iowa, one on the west side. And they joined to form Mid-American Energy. And I ran a consulting practice where the people who either voluntarily or involuntarily left the company, they went through to find what's next. I helped people start businesses, I helped people retire, and I helped people find their next jobs. And it was at that time, especially the people who had left the organization involuntarily after working there for 20 plus years, they were very devastated when they came through. And part of what we did was help them look at the past 20 years and find out all of the great things they've done, what their accomplishments were, who they were and what they wanted in the future. And I was early in my career at that time. I turned 30 in that office. And I thought to myself that I didn't want to wait for a crisis to define my purpose and what I am meant to do in this world. So there I was working with other great consultants, and we were consulting each other. And I, at that time, realized I really liked helping people discover who they were and what their gifts were, their talents, so they could bring those to work into the world. So I decided that that was my purpose, was to help other people be the best people they were created to be. And as my career evolved and my responsibilities evolved, I had more responsibilities for departments and organizational systems. It shifted to be creating organizations that allow people to be their true, authentic selves at work. So, yes, over time, my purpose shifted. I still had my same true north. And it's important because it really helped guide my decisions as to what jobs to take, what jobs not to take, and how I wanted to spend my time and energy, both at work and at home.
Nice. And if you don't mind sidebarring here for a second about your time working with those laid off employees in Iowa, we're going through sort of a weird time, and these cycles kind of happen
Yeah.
regularly nowadays. Where we're recording this at the end of 2025, where you keep hearing random stories about mass layoffs. My sister-in-law was just laid off from a major consulting company. Um, what is there like a nugget you could share for someone who this may pop on their feed about, like, that moment of realization? Maybe they've been with a company for a long time, and then they get that, either the rumors circulating in the hallways, or maybe they get that pink slip. Like, what's one thing that you learned that helped those people through those turbulent times where you're working with those folks in Iowa?
Well, I'm a believer, Joe, that all things happen for a reason, even the things we don't like. And they're out of our control. And if we can look at what we've learned and take time to reflect on where we are in our lives and where we want to be, it can create opportunity for people. Instead of, they might have been stuck. They may have been just coasting through because it was a job with the paycheck and they had outperformed and weren't being challenged anymore. So there's many different circumstances, and to look at it as an opportunity with, a wide open field to be able to make some changes and do some different things in their lives.
Awesome. One of the things you talk about with culture, and one of the words you like to use is fluff. Like, culture is not fluff, and actually, the first chapter is not just fluff. Um,
Right.
and I think a lot of things that, and this, I think we could blame tech for a lot of things, but I think the tech industry is to blame about this idea of, like, just throw some posters up on the wall about what what our culture is. Let's have our bullet points of what we are, what we stand for. And as folks in the culture space and HR space know, like Enron, they had posters all over the place that talked about their culture, and we saw how that story ended, and we've seen that movie over and over again. So tell me about these leaders that think about the culture as just as something that you hang on a wall, but not a business system. And you mentioned the word system, so I think this could be one of those drinking games, Michelle. That, like, that we talk. We're talking about culture in terms of a system. It's not just like fluff. It's not just, again, the posters you put on the wall, the T-shirts you hang out, the ping pong tables. What's the biggest misconception about culture as you see it now in executive teams?
Well, it's hard, for one, and it is abstract. So it is not something that you can feel or talk. It's something you feel with your heart, not with your hands. So you can't see it. So it is abstract. And I think the biggest misconception is that if you define it once and communicate it, then it will happen. Where it to intentionally create a great culture, you have to really design it and organize it and then build it into everything, every single part of your organization, and talk about it all the time.
Hmm. And you talk in the book about the fact that, sometimes CEOs say, culture doesn't affect the bottom line, and you shared a story about one company that their turnover dropped from like 20% to like single digits.
Yeah.
Is that one of those, you talk about how the thing, like, you can't feel that, you can feel like that, you can actually see like a tactile response to culture. Tell me more about that.
Yes, and I've seen that over and over and over again. As a matter of fact, when the CEO decided to sell Bandag to Bridgestone, he came to me and said, "Michelle, did everything we do matter?" And so I said, "Marty, why don't we sit in a room and talk about everything we did and see what we think the impact was?" So we actually built a timeline of all of the cultural transformation initiatives we had done. And at the end, he concluded that we would have been gobbled up. We were the tiny player in a gigantic world, and we would have been gobbled up 15 years ago if it hadn't been for our strong culture. And so that for him, and we were a very successful company, for him really mattered. And then at Bridgestone, profits and results were 5 times what they were when we started, and there you're talking billions of dollars, and the energy in the company shifted. And then it was at, my last company where the turnover dropped from double digits above industry standard to single digits, saving the money what we estimated over a conservative estimate of over $1 million a year, and profits were 7 times what they were when we started. And so much so that the CEO said, "Michelle, what am I gonna do with all this money? Like, we've got so much left over, I don't know what to do with it all." And so we started, reinvesting back into the company because we did, share profits with all of our employees.
Ah, that's awesome. I'm sure they enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And it's funny too because the culture paradox is, and you write about this, is the leaders think they have a great culture, but the employees don't. First of all, tell me about that disconnect. Is it because the leaders maybe see just like, oh, we're profitable, we're doing well, that the culture is that what is that probably is it sort of like almost like a reflex of like, oh, if the company's profitable and doing well, then the culture must be good. Is that one of the common mistakes a lot of leaders make when it comes to them thinking that the culture's good when it's not?
Well, and the culture may be good for them. They're making the decisions, they're calling the shots. They're the ones that are, doing the deals, and they may not be having the same experience as all of the other employees in the organization. So your employees will tell you what a great culture means to them. And so it's really important to get that feedback once you have your culture established. So not all of us are starting companies from scratch, so the culture already exists. So you have to diagnose where you're at and then think about where you want it to be, where you want it to go, get that established, and then start getting feedback on how you're doing uh, compared to what you espouse.
Hmm. All right, so let's get into the systems a little bit. Your PVVS framework,
Yeah.
purpose, vision, values, strategy. Um, you talk about the fact that most organizations need 3 to 5 values. What happens if a leader comes in like, Michelle, no, I got 7. I got 10 values. What happens when you start to water things down a bit and just throw too many values on the wall, so to speak?
People don't remember them. They don't remember what they're supposed to do. And I do an exercise with my clients where they have to really choose what their values are, and they have to narrow it down to 5. And at the end of this exercise, they're looking at like 52 different values and having to pick their top 5. And they find the relationship between the different values, like integrity, trust, honesty, those you have to pick between those 3, which one word is the most important to you. But just picking the value is part of it, but defining it in behavioral terms is the most important part of it. So, um, I think 3 to 5 because 1, if there's a laundry list of things that you have to remember and do, that's gonna be overwhelming and people are not gonna remember it. And then, usually, like at, Bridgestone, we called the values the rules of the road. At Barge, we called them the CARES model, and the values CARES represented the values, so they were easy to remember. At Bandag, we did have 12 values, so we did have more, and we called them the guiding principles. But they were written in a white book, and everybody had a copy of the white book, and we had training and development to help people understand what they all were. So I would say it was probably too many. So we changed that at Bridgestone and at Barge.
Oh, that's nice. If we can appeal that a little bit, Michelle, because you mentioned the fact that identifying the values is easy. It's like respect each other, being, you could do like, but the definition piece. Tell me about that. Why is it so hard for these leaders to like you said, we can find all these words that can mean good values for a company, but they can't make the connection of defining what it actually means.
Right. And so defining it in behavioral terms, because that's where you're able to observe it and see what it looks like in action or see what it looks like when it's not in action. And so what does collaboration look like? What does, respect look like? What does teamwork look like? And that way you can build recognition systems, you can build development systems, teaching people how to behave in those ways and reinforcing those behaviors when people do. So it is the word, but it's also defining it. And again, that's not it. After Jim Collins wrote Built to Last in the 90s, that was what they found in their research study, was that companies that lasted more than 100 years, they had a purpose, vision, and values. So companies went out and said, let's create our purpose, vision, and values. And a lot of companies did it, and then they just let it hang instead of really doing the hard work of implementing and integrating it into the DNA, the way the company operates.
Hmm. We've been joking about the poster culture, and I'm curious. Now that you work with a lot of clients in this space, are you able to identify when you start working with, like, oh, this is a poster culture? This is like one of those where they've got the signs, they have all the words, but again, they haven't made that final jump of like defining what it means. Is that something that you could easily see now? How is your poster culture radar, where you walk in and go, oh, yep, that's what they're doing here?
I was just facilitating a session a week or two ago, and I asked the group what their values were, and they couldn't name them. They couldn't tell me what their values were. If your values are understood, every single employee should be able to tell you what the values of the organization are. So it's very easy to spot whether the values are integrated into the DNA of the organization or not.
Mm. All right. So you listed off some of the common values, but is there one, like, what's the most common value companies think they live but don't? Because I'm sure they all have a variation. You use the word collaboration. I'm sure they have a version of that. Is that the one that they think they're doing but they're really not? Or there's a couple maybe that you think that like they companies think they got this value, but it doesn't actually play out in real life.
What I'm seeing, is I think accountability. So accountability, like getting results or being accountable could be a value. And what I see happens a lot is if there is an individual, any level in the organization that is getting really good results, but not holding themselves accountable to live the values of the company, they tolerate it because they're getting results. So they're getting the what, but they're not living the how, and that ruins the whole system. It breaks down everything because you're tolerating behaviors that are opposite of what you're saying is important. So you're not holding someone accountable, you're not making someone be accountable, and even if accountability is or is not your value, it breaks down the entire system.
Hmm. There is a fine line, Michelle, and I'm sure you've seen this, where like the culture is kind of like meh, but whatever product or service they have is so extraordinary, they succeed. So it's almost like band-aids of a bullet hole. Like companies like that will do certain things, like, hey, you get like unlimited PTO or something like that. And but does that fix the culture? No. What do you say to someone like that? Like, my company's amazing. Like everyone is doing very well, but they feel like crap.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've seen it. What do you say to someone? Like, do you say something? Is it as easy as like it's not going to last, or eventually, the shoe's going to drop? What happens in that scenario?
Well, if they feel like crap, they're really not doing well. The company might be doing well. The organization, the products are selling, you have customers products. I would be saying you're doing good, but you could be doing even better. You could be like killing it if you had the products that customers wanted, the strategy that people, that was working for you, and your culture and your people were aligned behind it. You could be doing extraordinary.
All right, good to know. All right, so without giving too much free advice,
Yeah.
what's the first step when you're diagnosing the current culture? Like when you get hired, or someone says, "Hey, Michelle, we'd love you to check out the culture," and you maybe have like a little meeting with a couple of C-suiters. Do you have like a go-to question that you ask, like, "Hey, X, Y, do you guys do X, Y, Z?" Like, where do you usually start?
So usually it does start with the customer and what the results that you're getting and what behaviors are driving those results. And then you circle when you're diagnosing, you circle that back around to look at them. And I do always ask, what is your purpose or your mission? Why do you exist as an organization? And then see what they say. One, I look for consistency amongst leaders. Are they all saying the same thing? And then the second is I look for, is the purpose or mission as it's stated, and I use those terms interchangeably. Is it a statement of what they do, or is it an inspiring statement for the greater good? Like, is there emotional appeal in their mission statement? So I'm looking for the quality of the statement and also the consistency of understanding what the statement is among leaders in the organization. And I do the same with the vision. And the vision, so the mission is a statement of why your organization exists. What are you bringing into the world, into the society, into community? Your vision is a statement of where you want to be. You can look out 3 years, 5 years. It used to be 10, 20, 25 years, but in this day and age, the time span is a lot shorter. So a vision of where you want to be. So your purpose is who you are, vision is where you want to be, and then your values are the things that guide you. They're your true north in terms of what's important, of how people who belong to this entity, this organization, this institution should behave and believe when you're here.
Mhm. Let's talk about purpose or vision real quick, like you just mentioned. You've walked into companies where leaders can't articulate either one of those, the purpose or vision.
It's quite common.
Yeah, and I was just gonna ask, why? Why is it so common?
Gosh, I don't well, I think people
Is
don't
this like
spend
the
the
million
time there
dollar question, Michelle?
thinking
Like
about
if you knew the answer.
it. Yeah. Well, I was asked this question the other day, and I believe that CEOs, executive leaders are so under the gun to deliver profits that they get so focused on the numbers that they spend their time and energy thinking about the numbers and delivering numbers, and they don't have the capacity. Not They have the capability, they don't have the capacity to think about other stuff that may seem soft or fluffy to them.
Hmm. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's almost like you can almost see that from the employee point of view too, right? Because, I often say that most people nowadays that are working in a white collar job, they're not thriving, they're surviving. And, they're not, and especially, we talked about the fact that we're in weird times now where a lot of layoffs and turnover happening. So employees may be afraid to
Yeah.
speak up. So if the leader is not doing a great job, and maybe they're not self-aware to realize that they're not doing a great job, and the employees are too scared to say anything,
Yeah.
how do you fix that, Michelle?
Well, first you have to be aware of it, like anything, you have to be aware of it and take the time to slow down. Know that if you slow down, you'll be able to go fast later. So taking the time to slow down, acknowledging what is going on, and realizing that if you focus on elements of culture and team building, and you get the energy and the direction of people all moving in the same direction, aligned around your purpose, vision, your values, and your strategy, and that clarity comes to the organization, that's when the magic happens. That's when the performance beyond what you could have expected, the profits that you're looking for, that's when those are delivered.
Nice. In the book, you drop a bomb that like blew my mind. Design clockwise, diagnose counterclockwise.
Yes.
Explain that.
Yes. So if we all had the opportunity to design an organization from scratch, just we're going to create this organization, you would start with what your customer, you have a product or a service that you want to deliver, and you would start with your customer and what the customer needs, what is a need in the community. And then you would design or define the company's purpose in relation to the needs of the customer and of the greater society. So you would design it based on the customer. Then you would say with your vision, what do you want to be for the customer? What values, design your systems that all drive behaviors to get results. And then hopefully those results satisfy the customers, and then the profits come in. If you're diagnosing, you go backwards and you say, are your customers satisfied? Are your employees satisfied? Are you getting what you want? Are your results what you want them to be? And if they're not, then you go in and you say, okay, what behaviors are driving those results? What systems and processes are driving those behaviors? Is our strategy clear? Are our values clear? Is our vision, is it all aligned? So you designed clockwise and you diagnose counterclockwise.
Nice. And in what you do in terms of culture assessments, is it all very deja vu for you because you've been doing culture assessments for a while? Is it the same as it was 5, 10, whatever day you started doing culture assessments? Are you seeing the same problems over and over again? And have you ever stopped, Michelle, and be like, why? Why is it always the same thing?
Well, yes, it is usually the same thing or parts of the same thing.
Okay.
And I have always said I'm industry agnostic because I'm in the people business, and organizations, no matter what industry you're in, are social systems. They're made up of people working together to achieve a goal. So, um, I think they're the same because human beings are, and that's why AI is trying to help us and take over, because human beings can be more complicated instead of just spitting out data. And we have different personalities, different needs, different ideas. And it takes a lot to get people moving in the same direction. And there is a way to do it, a very intentional way to do it, but it does take time and effort and consistency.
All right, cool. All right. So if someone happens to pop this on late in the afternoon, maybe in the evening, and they haven't read Cultural Excellence yet, what should every leader do tomorrow morning to start to strengthening their culture, no matter where they are in the spectrum, whether they have an amazing culture or it's not so good? Um, what's a step a leader can take that's pretty intentional? It doesn't mean they have to reinvent the wheel or buy like a new a new HR platform for the company that adds to the tech stack. What's something simple that a leader can do tomorrow to strengthen their culture?
I would say start asking questions and start listening. So ask yourself, is our purpose defined? Is it known throughout the organization? Does it have emotional appeal for us that we're doing something, greater than who we are and part of something bigger than who we are? Is our vision appealing? Does it make people want to show up every day and help us achieve it? Are our values being lived? Do people know what our values are? Are our strategies clear, and are they cascaded? Does every person in our organization know their part in helping us accomplish the strategy and the direction that we're going? And are we getting the results we want? And if not, looking at the culture and the way that it's aligned across your organization is a very, very good place to start.
Nice. And I know a lot of your work is obviously with leaders. And I know leaders, they sometimes get, I think maybe sometimes too much of the brunt for any kind of cultural mishaps. So what should like every employee should ask themselves about the culture they're contributing to? Because at the end of the day, you say you're in the people business. So what do the people have to do to improve? Because like we said, it's not the leader obviously sets the strategy. You would lead by example, but at the end of the day, the employees have to, do it or not, or maybe or coast, like you said earlier. What should some of these folks that are on the employee level ask themselves about the culture that they're contributing to?
Yeah, and that's a really great question because it is an interesting phenomenon because the way I define organizational culture is the behavior of its leaders and the behavior that the leaders tolerate. So if the leaders are not behaving in ways that create a great culture, unfortunately, I don't think there's a whole lot employees can do about it. So that is, and I've seen that happen too many times, so then they show up, they might do their job, they are compliant to whatever they need to do. Hopefully, they're compliant and doing their job, but they are not committed. You're not getting all of them at work. All their ideas, all their passion, all their energy. You're not getting them. They're just doing what they need to do to earn a paycheck. So it's more transactional instead of transformational. Now, the beauty of organizational culture is it does start with the leaders. So they have to intentionally define it, demonstrate it consistently, and drive it throughout the organization. And once it is embedded in the organization and it's set and everyone is bought in, that's when it starts bubbling up from the employees. So the employees then start holding each other accountable for living the values and living the culture that's been created in the organization, but they have to have the support from the leaders to be able to do that. I've even seen an organization that the employees hire people. They're part of the interview process, and they will say, "Nope, not a good culture fit." So they'll call each other out and say that behavior doesn't align with the culture that we have, and we need to behave differently. So they start holding up the values as standards of expectations, behaviors.
Awesome. All right. Well, we have to put a pin in this conversation, but we're going to be back and we're going to talk about actually building the systems the
Yeah.
next time we talk. But in the meantime, if folks want to read up on Michelle, the name of the book is Cultural Excellence, A Leader's Guide to Strengthening the Heart of Your Organization. She is Michelle Herline. Michelle, if folks want to reach out to you, what's the first place to start?
You can go to my website at michelleherline.com.
Awesome. Michelle, I'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks so much, Joe. It's been fun.
And that's going to do it for this episode. If you want to find out more information about Michelle and other amazing authors, go to theauthoritycompany.com.